Given our socio-economic conditions, we've had to ease restrictions. Thus, in the employ of the risk-adjusted strategy, we've subjected each province and district or metro to its own level of the risk alert system. This will assist us in mounting coordinated and targeted interventions, especially in the deployment of our limited resources. Nonetheless, as per the announcement of the President, we will move the whole country of South Africa to risk level 3, which implies certain adjustments to our level 4 regulations. However, our state of national lockdown continues until such time that we have flattened the curve for a sustainable period. In this regard, our differentiated approach and risk levels will be directed by the advice we will receive from the Minister of Health and inputs from WHO, ministerial advisory experts, and various cabinet ministers. These levels are applicable at a provincial level, all metropolitan areas and districts within that province, unless a differentiated alert level is explicitly determined as a hotspot. And compatriots will remember that the President did mention the areas that are deemed as hotspots. So as we usher level 3, which will apply nationally from the 1st of June this year, the following areas are declared as hotspots: Tshwane, Johannesburg, Ekurhuleni, Thekwini, Nelson Mandela, Buffalo City, Cape Town, West Coast Overberg, Cape Winelands District, Chris Hani District in the Eastern Cape, Ilembe District in KwaZulu-Natal. And what that means is that the Minister of Health may advise more stringent measures in some parts in those areas, depending on the spread of the virus. So far, we've only identified potential spots, and we are doing all we can to change the fortunes of those areas. In the event that our collective efforts bear little or no fruit, such an area will require added efforts, including subjecting it to higher level restrictions, including the limitation of movements within and to and fro hotspots. In the areas that are not hotspots, we will allow movement within the district and localities, permit movement to work, to buy, obtain goods and services, for medical attention, for exercise. The limitation on movements across provinces and now between metropolitans and districts and hotspots may be prohibited, except for persons traveling for the purpose of starting work, moving to a new residence, or caring for an immediate family member, and also attending funerals as it has been before, or going for work or business that is allowed under level 3. Given that schools will open in a phased approach, there will also be open travel between provinces and districts for pupils, students, and teachers. As we know, some of them live at the border of provinces and they have to commute pretty much every day. As said by the President, we will lift the curfew and allow more time for exercise, walking and cycling. However, this is permitted as long as this is not done in organized groups. In this regard, health protocols and social distancing must be strictly observed, including wearing of masks. Public training, fitness and recreational facilities remain closed except those conducting non-contact sport matches without spectators. The Minister of Arts and Culture and Sports will elaborate on this. Workplace gatherings for work purposes will be permitted under strict conditions and in the observation of health, hygiene and social distancing protocols. Employers must ensure that the 1.5 meter distance is maintained amongst employees. We will have to limit the number of people in the workplace so that we minimize the chances of infection, or take other measures to ensure that social distancing is observed. In minimizing the chances of infection on the consumption places for food, entertainment and recreation will remain closed. These will include places such as restaurants, ship-ins, taverns, nightclubs, bars, cinemas, theaters, fairs, bazaars, casinos, or similar places. But as you know, food will be available from restaurants, from takeaway places, only for collection or delivery, but not for sit down. As will hotels, lodges, and basically all accommodation facilities will remain closed except for confined tourists who may have been locked down and are still in those places, or for quarantine and isolation. But also, since we have opened the economy for people who are traveling for business and work. And the Minister of Tourism will elaborate. With regards to funerals at level 3, we'll continue to limit the interprovincial travel for the purpose of attending funerals. Those permitted to travel will be legal spouses, partners of the deceased, children and grandchildren of the deceased, whether they are biological, adopted, stepchildren, or foster children. Children, parents of the deceased, whether biological, adopted, step-parents, and foster parents, siblings, whether biological, adopted, or step-brothers and sisters, and of course, grandparents. Indeed, the virus has challenged our ways as a society and our various cultures. This is a time when we should all join in meditation, in fellowship and prayer. Consequently, as the President said, we will have a National Day of Prayer, which will be on Sunday, but this will be praying at home or through virtual means. We have also widely consulted with religious sectors led by our President and are now in a position to categorize religious counseling as an essential service, This will enable the millions who have been affected by this virus to receive this such needed service, since the majority cannot afford professional attention on this of this nature. Religious gatherings such as in places of worship will be allowed from the 1st of June, so long as health, hygiene, and social distancing is observed. This means that we must maintain 1.5 meters between the worshippers and the maximum of 20 congregants. Should the chosen venue be able to accommodate such? If indeed the venue is too small to accommodate 50 people at 1.5 meters apart, it means there will be less congregants in that venue. They must also be wearing masks and sanitizing of hands and no contact. And they must also be screening when people arrive at the place, so that those who may be having symptoms may be sent for testing or medical attention. Our lived experience have shown that funerals are COVID-19 transmission vessels. Consequently, we will continue to limit the number of funeral attendees to 50, provided the transportation, hygiene, health, and social distancing protocols and guidelines are observed. The station commanders of all police stations or a person charged by them will keep meticulous records with regard to the funerals and number of people attending. Recent experience, particularly in the Western Cape and Eastern Cape and Limpopo, show that interprovincial travel has contributed to community transmission. Consequently, travel between the provinces is not permitted, with the exception of those possessing a permit to attend a funeral or conduct essential services between our provinces and districts, or are going there for work or business, and they will have permits. Workers and those who are going there for business will have permits from their employers. The big challenge about interprovincial travel is really the fact that the economic hubs, which have the majority of the people, are also, on the whole, the ones that have more infections. And so it's important that when people come to these places for work, they don't then commute every weekend to go to another province, because they may be transmitting or taking the virus. As we know, the virus doesn't move, it's moved by people. So that is the reason why we have to still limit interprovincial travel. Our international ports of entry remain closed except for those designated by the Minister of Home Affairs to undertake the transportation of fuel and cargo for humanitarian operations, repatriation, or evacuations of for medical emergencies, movements for international organizations that may be deemed important, but also South Africans still coming back home and foreigners leaving the country. and also those who may be coming back to study as the schools open, or coming back to work who work in South Africa but live in other neighboring countries. So the Minister of Home Affairs will indeed give directions in that area. In order to ensure smooth movement of employees and as a measure of careful and gradual opening of our economy, we will also permit domestic air travel at a date that will be determined by the Minister of Transport. And of course, interprovincial cargo for carrying imports, exports, and goods manufactured in South Africa will continue. And the Minister of Transport will make announcements, but the health protocols still have to be kept. And amongst those returning to work are all public servants, with the exception of those who have permission to conduct work from home. And of course, as we announced right from level 5, that those who are 60 and above, and those who have other illnesses, who have comorbidities, are encouraged to stay at home and only go out if it's absolutely necessary. And preferably, if they have to work at home, because the mortality rate in those groups is much higher than in the lower groups. This provision also means that local government can and will operate close to full operation. Consequently, council meetings can take place, but under strict health protocols and social distancing, and directions will be issued in this regard. Given the potential to further transmissions, we will continue to ask public engagements such as these INBIZOs, IDP consultations, to continue to be done virtually or by electronic or broadcast platforms, as we are currently doing. The various associations and businesses have also developed industry-specific guidelines. However, recent experience, particularly in some of the areas that were open earlier, like mining, direct us to strengthen these in consultation with various industries. So what it means is that every company must have a COVID plan and a COVID compliance officer. And that plan must be known not only by the employer, but the employees. And that plan should be available when inspectors come or anyone comes to see, and must be adhered to. And it's important because if those plans are not adhered to and COVID starts spreading in the company will have to close. So it's for the protection both of the company and of the jobs that company offers. Compatriots, when we embarked on this journey, we did say it would not be smooth sailing. We will have to adjust our plans as we gain and gather more experience. COVID-19 has hit hard on all South Africans, particularly those who are vulnerable and homeless. We have mounted a response, but we cannot afford to have many more in the streets. To this end, we will continue to make sure that those who are homeless under level 3 are still kept in shelters. However, given the rental income is also an important livelihood stream for some, we have inserted the possibility of a competent court to grant an eviction order, provided it is just and equitable. The sale of tobacco products, e-cigarettes and related products remain prohibited for this period, except when they are destined for the export market. The sale of liquor in licensed premises will now be permitted as of the 1st of June for the limited period between Monday and Thursday from 9 a.m. to 1700 hours. However, on-site consumption is prohibited, and e-commerce sales will be permitted subject to the same on-site trade days and times. The Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition will elaborate in this regard. Suffice to say, no special or event liquor licenses will be issued for the duration of this period. In opening the economy, we must maintain a firm eye on our goal of flattening the curve, minimizing the rates of infection and deaths. We must remain conscious of the ever-present danger that we can quickly reverse our gains if we act too hastily or irresponsibly. To this end, the operating sectors of our economy must pay attention to strict health, hygiene, and social distancing measures, as I have said. We must also secure the livelihoods of our citizens. The social and economic measures we have implemented have at times not fully reached the intended recipients. Through collaboration and concerted actions, we will better target our interventions so that we see a brighter and a better South Africa beyond the virus. All the measures we have implemented are difficult but necessary. We must endure today so that we can secure the future of this beautiful country.